All right, let's dive into a pretty fascinating and, maybe even revolutionary idea from a 19th century mystic philosopher named Ramalinga Vallalar. It's a spiritual concept he called Sutta Sivanilai. And believe me, it challenges pretty much everything we think we know about reaching the divine.
And this is really the central question his whole philosophy asks us. It's basically saying, hey, forget what you think you know about spiritual attainment. We're going to explore a truly radical idea here, that the highest spiritual plane, the ultimate state, it's not unlocked by complicated rituals or intense self-discipline. Nope, it's unlocked by something far more fundamental, a deep, profound, all-encompassing empathy for every single living thing.
So what exactly is Sutta Sivanilai? Well, the name translates to the pure state of being. But according to Vallalar, this isn't just, another level of heaven. He described it as a totally unique plane of existence, one that was hidden from humanity for thousands of years behind 7 mystical veils. And get this, he claimed no one, and I mean no one, had ever reached it before him, or even knew it was there.
And here's the really crucial part. This wasn't something he just figured out through study. He said it was a direct revelation. Vallalar taught that this ultimate state was deliberately kept secret for ages. He claimed that the divine itself, which he called by a very specific name, Arat Paramjyoti, or the vast grace light, personally guided him there, pulling back those 7 veils one by one to reveal an entirely new path for all of humanity.
I mean, that sounds pretty incredible, right? But it immediately brings up the big question, how in the world do you actually get there? Well, the answer requires a complete paradigm shift in how we think about spirituality.
And this is where you see the stark difference. So on one side, you have all the traditional paths that focus on self-discipline, the breathing exercises, the rituals, the chanting, all that stuff. Vallalar's path, which he called the Sudasanmarga, just sweeps all of that off the table. It has one single requirement, Jiva Karunyam, compassion for all life. That's it.
This right here is the game changer. In his teachings, compassion isn't just a nice virtue to have, it's the actual engine for divine attainment. The path isn't about self-improvement in the typical sense. It's completely recentered on what you feel for others. The whole idea is that a heart that is just overflowing with genuine empathy is what attracts the divine, almost like a magnet.
Okay, so if compassion is the key that attracts the divine, what happens next? Well, it leads to this incredibly profound experience of union. Vallalar had a specific word for it, kalatal, which basically means merging.
And he describes this merging process so beautifully. It's not some vague, fuzzy concept. He says the divine light merges with every single part of his being, one by one. First, it merges in his eyes, which grants him the sight of all existence. Then, in his mind, filling his thoughts with nothing but pure truth. It continues in his song, making his very words a divine creation. And then finally, and this is the most critical part, it merges in his life force.
And this last step, this is the ultimate purification. When that divine light finally merges with a person's life force, it triggers something incredible. All of your karmic records, all that baggage from countless past lives are just completely burned away, wiped clean, erased. It frees the soul from the cycle of rebirth forever.
So what's the actual reward for walking this path and achieving this state? It's not just one specific perk. It's something total, complete, and all-encompassing.
To really get how total this is, think of it like this. Most spiritual achievements are kind of like a national ID card. They're valuable for sure, but their benefits only work within the borders of that one specific spiritual territory or realm.
Sutta Sivanilai, on the other hand, is like getting an international passport with all the visas included. It doesn't just give you the benefits of one realm, it grants you access to and includes the rewards of all other spiritual realms combined. It's the master key. You don't lose anything by choosing this path. You literally gain everything.
So let's just recap the sheer scale of this all-in-one benefit, because it's pretty wild. You don't just get one reward, you get the sum total of all other paths combined. You're granted what he called an eternal, imperishable body,
one that is literally outside the normal laws of nature. You get total, absolute clarity of mind. And finally, the very idea of you as a separate being just dissolves into this perfect oneness with everything.
And all of this brings us to the core takeaway of this entire philosophy, a conclusion that completely turns the very act of worship on its head.
It all boils down to this one single powerful idea. For someone who is truly enlightened, active, heartfelt compassion isn't just a step towards worship, it is the worship itself. It becomes the highest possible form of divine service. This means feeding a hungry person, caring for a suffering animal. That becomes your prayer. That is your ritual. That is your offering to the divine.
And so, we're left with this really powerful practical thought. Vallalar called compassion the key to the house of wisdom, which really makes you wonder if our daily acts of kindness, whether they're big or small, aren't just social niceties, but are actually a spiritual practice with real cosmic weight. What doors could you unlock starting today?